I just am so happy to find excellent educators with whom I can have a conversation and learn more about, especially when they are Jamaican, yes? Dr. Janice, how you do?
I am wonderful. It's so good to be here. Thanks for having me.
It's my pleasure. You tell me, what is it that you did to turn around a school in South Florida, and which school was it?
I became a principal of Pine Grove Elementary School in Delray Beach, Florida, one of the lowest performing schools, not only in our county, but in the state of Florida. The superintendent thought that I had some skills that were needed, some leadership skills and some instructional skills that were needed in that school. So I took on the challenge, went to the school, and was extremely surprised at the enthusiasm that kids had to learn and the determination from their parents to help them to achieve. So I rallied the forces. I created a reform model that we instituted within the school. And within 1 year, we went from being one of the lowest performing schools to being an A school.
Of course, that's because you were trained originally in Jamaica.
I agree.
But what drives your passion for education?
Well, there are so many teachers who laid the groundwork for me. They showed me how. They showed me that teachers are not only concerned about reading, writing, and mathematics. A teacher has to be concerned about the total child. And because they were so concerned for me and my potential, they did for me what I thought was, well, they did for me what my parents could not do for me. And so I wanted to be just like them when I grew up.
And you knew that from very early. Let's go back to Martin in St. Mary, which is where you grew up.
Yes.
You're the last of 3 children?
I'm the last of 3 children. And I went to Miss Mac Basic School in Martin to begin with. And at Martin, at Miss Mac's Basic School, Miss Mac was like my mother away from home. She showed me that I had the ability to learn to read before I left basic school. So by the time I went to Martin Primary, to big school, I was a proficient reader.
And then you landed in the hands and arms of another great educator. Tell us that story.
Oh, Mrs. Miss Tilly Scott Horton. She was not only my teacher and principal, but she was also my mother's teacher. So again, I found another teacher who had an investment in my future. And in addition to accelerating my academics, at Martin School, Mrs. Horton taught me how to have courage, how to have how she gave me an understanding that I could be anybody and do anything. I think about being a part of the groups that would perform for a festival.
She was big in the arts.
She was big in the arts.
Can you remember anything that you did in any of those groups for festival?
Oh, yes. I would perform as Miss Lou, and I would say poems that, Claude McKay poems. I danced, and I did the digging songs, you know, yes. And going to Port Maria was a real treat. Port Maria was our capital city. And so leaving from Martin on the bus to go to perform in Martin, not only just in Port Maria.
That's where you'd have been a judge too.
Right.
Right in Port Maria, the JCDC judges would come down
to
listen to the children and watch them and judge and mark and decide who would go on.
Yes, and I learned stage presence. I learned to talk in front of large groups of people. And thank God she did that for me, because today, I am not afraid to talk in front of small audiences or large audiences.
But your parents also played a very important role in your development, their children's development. You're the last of 3. They believed in education. How did they encourage you?
Well, my parents were truly my heroes. My daddy or mama did not complete formal education in Jamaica. But they totally understood that if we got a quality education, then we could break out from all the barriers that were surrounding us. And they made sure that when we got home, homework was done. They made sure that I went to lessons class. They made sure to speak to Mrs. Houghton when it was necessary to speak to Mrs. Houghton. And when you got home from school, the first question was, go get your book, go do your homework. And so we had no choice but to just to work hard.
So you never go bush? You never tie
Me
out
never
goat?
me never do any of that, you know. And plus, me love to read so much that I use books as an excuse not to do any chores. My brother and sister stayed mad with me because I always had a book to finish. And another beautiful thing about Martin School is that we learned to read the classics. When I got there, we were reading classics, Little Women. And so my teachers, I was this little thing reading chapter books. And my teachers and I were reading buddies. We would talk about the books we were reading, and I just felt so wonderful.
That's Mrs. Horton.
Yes.
That's Miss Stella Horton for you. But your parents, Mama's name and Dad's name?
Daddy is Alexander Augustus Scott.
And he ran a dry cleaning business. We'll
The
get back to that
first-
in a
yes,
while.
yes.
And mother?
Mama, Gwendolyn Freeman Scott, and she became the community's hairdresser
So you had a thing about fashion from very early in your life.
quite early.
The dry cleaning business.
Right.
You said it was the first of its kind.
Right.
Where in St. Mary did he establish it?
It was on the main street in Port Maria. We lived in Martin, so there was a need to drive to Port Maria every day. And when he established, he was a tailor by trade. And so becoming a dry cleaner was just a natural fit for that business. So thank God for the Small Business Board here. He got a loan and he established this dry cleaning establishment. So when I was about to leave elementary school, I would go on a Friday evening. We would take the bus. My brother, sister, and I would take the bus and go to Port Maria, and we would help out. Saturday morning, we would drive down with him. And so after high school, then I became his personal assistant in the dry cleaning business.
So you became an entrepreneur.
I did early.
You had to learn the business.
Yes, and you know, something else. He would participate. He would be one of the sponsors for the float during regatta time in Port Maria. So
and
I
Port
would
Maria
ride.
had the regatta. It was a big thing. It was part of the festival events that
Yes.
were organized by the Jamaica Cultural Development Commission. Could we take a break?
Yes.
Let's take a break, and when we come back, we'll continue this conversation. My guest is Dr. Janice Scott Clover. She's from Martins in St. Mary. We'll soon come back.